Yes, I have, as a matter of fact. A lot of people accept it. A lot of my friends do accept it and think it's has good information. But I grew up in a very conservative Republican household, and so my siblings have disagreed with it. Not been terribly pleased with it, but we try to avoid the topic. But generally, it's been well accepted. It's been accepted and used at different conferences. I'm a member of World Beyond War. The book has been sold at their conferences, that sort of thing. So overall, the reception to it, I think, has been very positive, which is good because it does bring into question some people's deeply held beliefs.
Yes, it does. And you know what? A lot of people they've never heard of like false flags and things. They have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, just putting that back on you and talking about those, your colleagues and your friends and things. Did everybody or did anybody come to you and say, what do you mean by what is a false flag? And what do you mean by it? I mean, what is it?
Yes, people did ask me that. That's why the idea of the three key words, propaganda and lies, well, four key words and false flags. So people get the idea that false flags are associated with propaganda and lies. But I simply tell them that false flag is some excuse that the government makes some event might happen, and the government twists the meaning of that event to make it look threatening to the United States in some way, or to make it look as if it's threatening to people in another country, and therefore the United States has to intervene for humanitarian causes, which is always an excuse, but never the real reason. So yeah, the name is a little bit vague, but I hope that those particular words of the title, but I hope that the rest of the title and its subtitle, How the U.S. Justifies Its Wars, made it sufficiently interesting that people would be intrigued by it and want to pick it up and read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what? Just to reiterate on that, you're saying that, like, if something happens, let's talk about the event itself. Whatever happens, the person that comes out with the solution, are they the ones that are usually behind the false flag?
Yes. If we can use an example that some of your listeners certainly will be familiar with, during the Vietnam War, there was the Gulf of Tonkin event, or actually non-event. This was a case that occurred in the Gulf of Tonkin when it was thought that the U.S. destroyers, two of them, the Maddox and the Sea Turner Joy, that were in the Gulf, that one of those ships' instruments indicated that the ship was under an attack. So both ships began firing in the darkness. But what happened was, in a couple of days, they recognized that these were ghost images on the radar. Ghost images are similar to a mirage in a desert. It looks like something's happening, but it isn't. So, but as a result of I'll call it a false flag, but this event that didn't really occur, there was no attack on these two ships at that time. There were several nearby aircraft carriers pounded North Vietnam that same evening. And then the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, of course, was passed as a result of this, which greatly escalated the Vietnam War. Prior to that, there were about 23 soldiers in Vietnam. Immediately after that, there were 184,000. So this resulted in another 11 years of war with Vietnam, which killed 55,000 U.S. soldiers. And by conservative estimates, 2 million Vietnamese, Cambodian, and Laotian people. And this was all because of a false flag. The U.S. wanted to prevent the reunification of North Vietnam and South Vietnam, which would have been under a communist government, as it turned out to be. And so the government was willing to use this event, which within days they knew had not happened, in order to escalate the war.
Okay, so that sounds, wow, that's crazy. And that sounds like 9/11. Was 9/11 a false flag event?
Well, 9/11 was led to a series of false flags. Remember that George Bush
Wait. Before you get in that, was it the event itself caused a false flag event caused by the United States?
I don't see 9/11 as a false flag event. It was an event that the United States certainly in its actions in the Middle East, in its wars in the Middle East, its support for Israel in the oppression of the Palestinian people. There are reactions to these things. The United States can't continue to be aggressive throughout the world and not expect some pushback occasionally. And I think that's what, at least in part, 9/11 was. So it wasn't a false flag. It was a real event that happened because of hostility to the United States. But I don't describe that as a false flag because it wasn't the event itself. However, what the U.S. did after this was to say that Osama bin Laden had to be captured, and he was in Afghanistan at the time, and the Afghanistan government said, yeah, you can have him. We just want to be sure he's tried somewhere but in the United States. That wasn't good enough for the United States, and so they invaded Afghanistan, ostensibly to get bin Laden. Bin Laden was killed. The war continued for 20 years. So that the reason for invading Afghanistan was certainly a false flag.
And what about all the push to go into Iraq and say that they had weapons of mass destruction and things like that? That just continued on and on and on.
That was certainly a false flag. The idea that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. George Bush, the president at the time, went before the United Nations and said that Iraq was withholding important information about its nuclear program, about its experimental data, and all kinds of things. And now, a few months later, Secretary of State Colin Powell did the same thing at the United Nations. He showed satellite photos that he said showed the presence of active chemical munitions bunkers. He said this was being disguised from inspectors. This was all just lies. It was lies because the United States wanted greater access to oil. In fact, after the war, Alan Greenspan, who was the chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve for almost 20 years, said that he was saddened that it was politically inconvenient to acknowledge what everyone knows. The Iraq War was largely about oil. So this was the United States going into Iraq. Iraq certainly had problems, as every country on the planet has problems. But the United States went in, destroyed the infrastructure, rekindled decades-old rivalries between organizations and sects that had been living together in basic harmony. Just destroyed the government and occupied it, and continues in many regards to occupy it to this day.
And what was the reason, though? If they know that they don't have weapons of mass destruction, why isn't the United States in the country? Well, you said it was to get oil, but I mean, do you think there was something else besides the oil that they were after?
There is certainly. The United States is very much threatened by Iran, and by having a government in Iraq that is friendlier to the United States, the U.S. can help to contain Iran, which it wants to do. Now, we have to remember, Iran has not invaded another country in like 200 years. It's not an aggressive country. It is a country whose government wants to basically protect its people and have a form of government that is pleasing to them. Again, there are problems in Iran, as there are in the United States and France and every other country.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
With comprehensive reports on local schools you won't find anywhere else, Homes.com is the only place to find the in-depth info home shoppers want. Very in-depth info. Curious about where a school ranks in the state? Look no further. Percentage of teachers in their first or second year? We've got it. Lowest student-teacher ratio? No problem. The best cafeteria lunch in the district for your 9-year-old food blogger? Would it surprise you if we said yes? Homes.com. We've done your
Talking about
homework.
false
Guys,
flags.
it's no use putting it off. The best time for an underwear refresh is now. Tommy John underwear is designed for a perfect fit that stays put all day. Their zero chafe thanks to 4 times more stretch than competing brands, and their innovative horizontal quick draw fly is a game changer. With over 30 million pairs sold, there are thousands of men out there more comfortable than you. Don't settle for less. Go to TommyJohn.com today for 25% off your first order with code COMFORT. That's TommyJohn.com, code COMFORT. Tommy John, comfort perfected.
But the United States wanted additional closeness, additional proximity to Iran, and Iraq was a means of doing so. Now, you have to remember that during the Iran-Iraq War, the United States supported Iraq and even licensed 70 biological exports to Iraq, which included at least 21 batches of anthrax. So the United States was approving chemical weapons, which are illegal under international law, to Iraq and providing them with those weapons.
And weren't they, I mean, some of those citizens had some biological weapons, didn't they?
They did, and this has happened in a number of countries that the United States supports. And the results of this, it's birth defects, it's cancer, it's extreme pain. But the United States is willing to do this. Remember Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, when she was told that sanctions against Iraq had killed 500,000 children, she said that was acceptable, that was worth the price. This is the kind of savagery that the United States government perpetrates on other countries in the world.
Let me ask you something else, Robert. Didn't the United States also, after they invaded Iraq, go in and just install who they wanted to run the government over there? I mean, it wasn't any type of whatever the people wanted. It was whoever the United States wanted.
Yes, as it does in many countries. The United States occupied Iraq and installed where there wasn't a lot of choice. Now, the U.S. defines democracy simply as having elections. If you have elections, you're a democracy. This is not true at all. There are many, many components to democracy, but that's what the United States did. And then it touted, we're having these free elections, and the people of Iraq are electing. They have a choice between one U.S. puppet and another U.S. puppet, and they're electing, guess what, the U.S. puppet, and all is well. But again, the idea of them having their own free voice and being able to really run the government they want and have the government they want is not something the U.S. is interested in.
You know, I've been in the military myself, and I had some friends that were that stayed in, but I do remember them telling me that at some, you know, like if they would go out on patrol or whatever, they would find like these flyers and stuff just everywhere. You know, things that the United States just drops from the air and spreads to all the citizens, and it's propaganda. Do you know some of the things that they were trying to get citizens to do over there? I mean, he never told me what the pamphlets and things said, but they obviously were trying to instigate some type of action among the citizens over there. Do you know?
I don't know specifically, but what the United States does when it does these propaganda efforts is to attempt to get the citizenry in whatever country it is as saviors. They want the U.S. Remember, Dick Cheney said that the U.S. soldiers would be greeted with flowers being strewn before them. This, of course, is not the case. So these kinds of propaganda documents that are continually dropped or used electronically now more than before are to cause dissatisfaction with the current government, whatever that might be, and to show the United States as the government that is going to save them from that and provide them with all these freedoms. Now, these propaganda efforts are not very well received generally because the United States view that it's the world savior, the world policeman, isn't believed much outside its borders, and certainly not in Middle Eastern countries and other countries, African countries, and other countries that have been the target of so much U.S. aggression over the decades, over the centuries. So these propaganda flyers and pamphlets that you've mentioned are doing very little more than causing pollution in the countries that they're distributed in.
Yeah, I don't think it's helping at all. They really have a very bad opinion about the United States, but you can't blame them. I also wanted to ask you what little media they have in the country. Is the United States controlling that as well?
The United States controls most of it, like the United States. There are independent news outlets, and there are some, but the United States is very careful to assure that the news that it wants broadcast around the world, whether it's coming from the United States or anywhere else, is what the United States wants it to be. And people see through this, but the United States continues to do this because it feels it's one way of slowly gaining a foothold and gaining or causing these countries to start to feel about the United States the way the United States wants them to feel. But you can put something on the news that says the United States is wonderful, and then you bomb a school. Which are the people going to be more responsive to? They don't care what's being said on the news. They care that their children have just been bombed.
Wow. Let me ask you something about here in the United States, as far as false flags and the media. Are they used together when something like this is being planned?
Always. The media, and I'm talking about the mainstream media. As I mentioned, there are independent news outlets, but even some of them sometimes fall into the trap of this. But the media, generally speaking, just parrots what the United States government says. If we can go to another example of the Gulf War, which lasted from August of 90 to February of 91, there was little support for this war. This was it looked to be a conflict between Iraq and Kuwait, and no one in the United States really cared about it. But then on October 10th of 1990, a 15-year-old girl known as Nahira, and I may not pronounce it correctly, said she was a hospital volunteer, and she said she saw babies being dumped from hospital incubators by Iraqi soldiers. She said she volunteered with several other women. Most of them were older than she, and she saw the Iraqi soldiers come to the hospital with guns. They took the babies, and it was so horrifying. This was George Bush talked about it. It was talked about in Congress. It was a video, and I'll get to the details of it in just a second, but it was seen, that her interview was seen by about 53 million people across the United States, and people are horrified. This is, of course, a horrifying thing. So actually, the truth that came out shortly thereafter was that this young woman was actually the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States. She admitted later that she had visited the hospital once, but only for a few minutes. A group that was called Citizens for a Free Kuwait had hired a public relations firm called Hill and Knowlton to create some kind of legitimacy for an invasion. Now, that agency later said that they really had no thoughts one or another about the war, but that this was a very successful campaign for their agency. So this was a war that was simply falsified. They took this, it was a total false flag, saying this young woman, a hospital volunteer, she'd seen these horrors, when actually she'd only been visited in the hospital once, very briefly. She wasn't who she said she was. She didn't see what she said she saw. But this was broadcast by about 700 stations around the United States. And as I said, 53 million people watch this. Of course, you see this, you're horrified because you think that it's true, but it was a complete and utter lie.
This is awful.
It is. And it goes on. It goes on and on and on, back through history and today. We could talk about what's being said, what the U.S. government is saying today about Iran, and Iran trying to get a nuclear weapon, and the United States can't allow that to happen. Well, first of all, who is the United States to allow anyone, any of the government, to have any weaponry or not have it? The United States is the only country in the world that's ever used nuclear weapons, and it used them on civilian populations. So,
right, and its own military. It tested on military soldiers.
Right. Yeah, look at the testing that is done. So what gives the United States the moral authority to threaten Iran over its nuclear development program?
Oh, and don't forget all the biological weapons tests were conducted on the citizens without their knowledge. Did a show on that too. It was awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awful. These people didn't know what was happening to them, and they had lifelong negative results as a result of these. Right now, the United States has just sent cluster bombs to Ukraine. Cluster bombs, which are outlawed by most of the countries of the world. They can be dormant for decades. There are many cases where children have come across them not knowing what they are. They've been blown to bits or horribly disabled by them. But the United States is now sending them, or has sent them now to the Ukraine.
Let me ask you something. Have you seen a slow shifting of the United States government? They mirror China's government. I mean, it's like communism. The way they are coming down on citizens now with censorship, and they're trying to de-platform people, and they only want you to talk about certain things, and they hide stuff, and it's just crazy. I mean, I see us becoming another China.
Yes, but this isn't new, this kind of censorship. During the Vietnam War, which I'm old enough to remember, every night on the news there would be information about how many U.S. citizens had died, and there were newsreels of the bodies coming back and being taken off the plane and so on. Very somber. Well, in later wars, this is not allowed. The United States said, no, we can't show this sort of thing. But the idea of this kind of censorship is nothing new. It's during World War I, the U.S. government established what called the Committee on Public Information, and it was its effects were far-reaching. It not only helped unify U.S. public opinion, but it called for conformity constantly, and it increased and accelerated intolerance of political dissent. So because of the Committee on Public Information, those people who might have been opposed to the war were silenced, were criticized, and were hesitant to speak. Now, during World War II, the Committee on Public Information had ceased after World War I, so they started the Office of War Information, which included the Office of Censorship.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
At Homes.com, we do whatever it takes to get you the in-depth info on local schools you won't find anywhere else. Things like student-teacher ratio, test scores, and school programs. And sometimes that requires attending school recitals. So many recitals.
That's my son. Isn't he terrific?
Yeah, a real prodigy. Homes.com.
Ding dong.
We've done your homework.
Lowe's knows how to turn big plans into real results. Whether it's new appliances or a home refresh, get started with 12-month special financing on purchases of $299 or more with the MyLowe's Rewards credit card, January 15th through the 30th. So you can invest in your upgrade now and pay over time. Lowe's, we help, you save. Offer subject to credit approval and cannot be combined. Minimum monthly payment required. See store at Lowe's.com for details.
And Franklin D. Roosevelt was president at the time, and he said that while Americans abhor censorship, there is some degree of censorship needed during wartime. Now, the press, of course, just followed along with it, and whatever the United States government wanted put in the news is what the press put in the news. But to think that censorship is essential in wartime, what are they censoring?
That's a good point, Robert. Your book has so many, there's so many examples here. Let's talk about something that I just have no clarity on at all. Is Grenada? Why did we go? What was the point in invading Grenada?
Well, there was no point actually, but the United States had a number of years earlier, of course, had lost the war in Vietnam, and under Reagan, they were looking for some kind of the government. The Prime Minister of Grenada was Sir Eric Gairy, who was very brutal. He was out of the country on some kind of diplomatic trip, but he was replaced by a man named Maurice Bishop. Bishop seemed to have what the U.S. saw as communist leanings, at least more so than what the United States was pleased by. But after a short time, he was overthrown by one that the United States said was even more communist leaning. Grenada has a population of about 100,000 at the time, had no real military, so the U.S. couldn't say that it was a threat. The U.S. couldn't go in for humanitarian purposes because the government had been building schools, roads, and hospitals, and that was likely to continue under the new government. So here was the thing. There were about 800 U.S. medical students in the country, and Reagan claimed that they needed to be protected because of the country was in a state of revolution. So the State Department asked medical school officials to publicly request U.S. intervention to protect the students. They refused. The parents of the medical students contacted Reagan and said, "Don't do anything, they're safe there." The medical school's chancellor polled the students. 90% didn't want to be evacuated. They were fine. They knew they were safe. There was no issue. But the United States invaded anyway. And here's the interesting thing. All this is interesting, but here's something interesting. The United States did receive a formal request from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States to protect the students by invading. So this request from this organization was supposed to have legitimized the invasion. But that request came at the request of the United States. The United States drafted the request, sent it, and conveyed it to the Caribbean leaders by special U.S. emissaries. So this whole thing was just a lie. The students didn't need or want to be protected. The government didn't want them there. The United States drafted a letter requesting the United States to invade. So this was the whole thing. Now, the United Nations did pass a resolution afterwards that condemned the invasion as a flagrant violation of international law. But Reagan said he didn't care about that. He said the United States was standing tall again.
How long were they over there?
Oh, it's a very limited time. It was like a month.
Let me ask you something. See, that makes me think. Do they ever do this type of thing in order to divert the world's attention somewhere, so they can do something else? I'm just trying to get your opinion on that. Maybe some of these events are made bigger than they really are so that they can, make people look one way while they're doing something somewhere else.
I don't think that happens, only because the United States feels it's justified in whatever it does. So it doesn't need to distract anyone. It doesn't need to distract the public from something, because they'll just do it and say that it's right because the United States did it. We saw that with the Iraq War. There was tremendous opposition to the Iraq War in the United States and throughout the world. The so-called Coalition of the Willing, which is the group of countries Bush got together to invade, didn't include many of the U.S.'s longest and closest allies. And even those countries that did send soldiers, sometimes they sent 20 and 30, so they could be part of the so-called coalition. But there was the U.S. doesn't see a need to distract from things now. We may see a difference in that depending on who the president is, but generally speaking, the U.S. is willing to present some reason for an invasion that it says is legitimate. The public buys it, and then after a short time, it wasn't correct, wasn't true, as with the Iraq War, as with the Vietnam War. But the United States gets into wars a lot easier than it gets out of them.
I'll tell you another really interesting part of your book is chapter, let me see here. It's chapter 9 when you talk about occupation of Haiti. I've been to Haiti myself, but when we went over there, it was Operation Uphold Democracy. I think that's what it was. But what happened in this instance, and why were they in Haiti?
Well, there was a lot of economic instability at that time, and the United States recognized that some other countries had financial claims on Haiti, and wanted to go in to ensure those financial liabilities were met.
What do you mean? Like what type of financial liabilities?
Well, it was things like businesses. A lot of foreign businesses had come into Haiti to profit from there and exploit the country, exploit its people. So there were a lot of loans that had been given to Haiti to try to stabilize it and shore it up, but the Haitian government wasn't able to meet those loans. So they had to be, rather than defaulting, the United States went in to control the government, to control the businesses, so those loans wouldn't be defaulted. So you'll notice in this that the needs of the financial backers of the country and financial investors in the country were more important than the human rights of the people in the country itself. So this is something we've seen repeatedly. But that was a main reason for the U.S. going into Haiti in order to control the government and control the finances.
That's really interesting there. When I was there, they said that, I don't know, some things was happening with the president over there. There was some type of government. They're trying to overthrow the government. And so we had to go, I think it was 93, we went over there.
I think that's right.
Yeah, it was, that country's a mess. I can tell you that it is a real mess. Let me talk about something else here. I want to talk about Cuba. It's a big mess. Cuba was. So tell us what was going on with Cuba, because you have it 1898 to current. So,
Right.
I mean, things didn't obviously end with the Cold War and things like that. So what was happening down there?
Let's go first to the Spanish-American War. That was 1898. So that's when U.S. intervention in Cuba really began in earnest. The people of Cuba were trying to gain their independence from Spain, and the U.S. was watching this very carefully. And the U.S. press was very sympathetic to the Cuban people, and they were filling their newspapers with sensational stories, many of which were false. All kinds of atrocities, injustice, and suffering. This was angering and infuriating the people of the United States. Now, at that time, Theodore Roosevelt, later became president, was Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and he felt that a sea power was going to make the U.S. a world power. So the U.S. government had a number of battleships in Havana Harbor. Now, we all remember the battleship the Maine, which blew up in February of 1898. And that was the year the U.S. involvement war started. And almost 300 U.S. sailors died in the explosion. Now, here's where it gets really, really interesting. An inquiry was held into the cause of the explosion. And there were some highly qualified experts in explosives who were willing to testify, and they offered their services, but they were not accepted. One of them had written, his name was Professor Philip Alger. He had written that there's no instances where a torpedo or a mine under a ship has exploded the magazines within. What a torpedo or mine does, it makes a hole in the ship sinks. But Roosevelt's views were hardening. He was convinced that it hadn't been an accident, that it had been sabotaged by the Spaniards, and so he invaded. Of course, the United States then took control of both Cuba and the Philippines as a result of that. Now, 76 years after the explosion of the Maine, all the information that had been gained was investigated and carefully reviewed, and everything indicated an internal explosion. There was no evidence that a mine or torpedo had sunk the Maine. Now, this information could have been had at the time in 1898 had these experts been invited to give their testimony and to look at the evidence and so on. But the United States wanted a war. This was a wonderful false flag to start a war. So that was from the beginning. Now, then, Cuba has been victimized by the United States repeatedly, since the overthrow of the U.S. puppet government of Batista and the government of Fidel Castro. The United States has sanctioned, embargoed, blockaded, and really worked to damage and harm the people.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. What if comparing car insurance rates was as easy as putting on your favorite podcast? With Progressive, it is. Just visit the Progressive website to quote with all the coverages you want. You'll see Progressive's direct rate. Then, their tool will provide options from other companies so you can compare. All you need to do is choose the rate and coverage you like. Quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Homes.com is the only place where you can find specialized neighborhood guides with the in-depth insider info home shoppers want. Very in-depth info. Want to know if there's homes for sale in the area? We've got it. How long has a home been on the market? We'll know it. Average lot size? Proximity to local parks? Of course. Insight into your neighbor's divorce? We're working on it. Homes.com. We've done your homework.
Did you know that you can buy your car completely online on AutoTrader? Really? Just visit autotrader.com, filter and search through dealer listings for the car you want, make, model, color, and all the features that matter to you. Go ahead, get picky. Whether you're into subcompacts with heated cup holders, crossovers with all-wheel drive, pickups with kicking sound systems, or SUVs that can survive whatever chaos your kids unleash, just drop in your info and you'll only see cars in your budget. Really, once you find your one and only, you can do the whole deal online and have the car delivered to your driveway. Or you can pick it up at the dealership and drive your new ride right off the lot. Really. AutoTrader makes it easy to buy your car online because the whole process is designed around your wants and must-haves. AutoTrader. Buy your car online. Really.
Of Cuba. Yet, after all these years, they continue. The people of Cuba continue to prosper. Things could be better, certainly, but they are able to live their lives, to raise families, go to school, and so on. It's interesting if you see pictures of Cuba. The cars are all from the 50s because they have to cobble together parts because they can't import from the United States. But many countries, citizens vacation in Cuba. Canadians are able to go freely to Cuba. U.S. citizens can if they go through Canada or Mexico, and the Cuban government is considered in not stamping the passports of U.S. citizens. But the U.S. has interest in this tiny island nation, which has no significant military, is not interested in harming it, but the United States continues with these punitive measures against it.
Are you surprised by any of this stuff that you found that the United States has done over the years, over and over and over and over?
When I was researching the book, I was surprised. I knew some things, certainly. I knew about the Gulf of Tonkin. I knew about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That those were false flags. But as I looked back from the very beginning, from the War of 1812, there were false flags raised to justify that war. And then I looked through again and again repeatedly throughout the world. The United States has created lies to justify an invasion. Sometimes humanitarian purposes, and the people in the country are always worse off than when the United States first went in. But the United States gained something in terms of another satellite country, part of its empire, oil or other natural resources. So this has been something that has been ongoing and I was shocked to see how much it's been a part of the United States since the inception of the United States.
Have you found, Robert, that the United States, when they are trying to pull off one of these false flags, they're doing it in collusion with another government?
Not always, but often, certainly, the United States has to, in order to gain legitimacy, it has to partner with some other government organization, as in the case with Grenada, when the Organization of American States made this request. So that seems the Organization of American States has membership in. There's several Central American countries that have membership in. So when that organization requested the U.S. government to intervene, it gave an appearance of legitimacy of partnership. Same with States to send a few soldiers, so their names of their governments could be put on this coalition if they're willing. So this is, the United States wants to say that it's not acting alone, it's not acting unilaterally, it has all these other countries involved. Another thing it sometimes does is try to get UN resolution to authorize either, if not an invasion, at least condemn a country for violating some international law. But the U.S. is very, very selective on who it requires to adhere to international law. The U.S. doesn't itself, and some of its major allies, including Israel, of course, are in constant violation of international law, but the U.S. supports them fully.
What about China?
China, too. China, again, there are many problems there. The United States is saber-rattling against China, is threatening China. This is say it's foolish, doesn't describe it. We recently had an example in the Middle East where where China broke an agreement between Syria and Iran. They had been antagonistic for years. They are now fully allied again. The United States doesn't like diplomacy. The United States doesn't want to talk to countries. The United States government could certainly talk to the Chinese government and work out differences, come to compromises, maybe compromises that neither country is crazy about, but that each can live with, to reduce tensions in the world. The United States could do that with every country that it has hostile relations with: Iran, Cuba, Venezuela. There's so many. But with China, the United States sees itself as one of the major world powers. China is another, and therefore it's not willing to compromise, to even negotiate on any of the differences that they have. And this could have devastating impacts for the world.
You know what? Speaking of China, they break stuff. They break international law all the time. What about the balloon that they flew over the United States? Things like that. I think China's, I hate to say, they're just ballsy. Just do whatever.
Yeah, there is that certainly, but we have to consider how much surveillance the United States has on China and the Chinese people. Now, this balloon, camera attached to a balloon, whatever that was, seemed really bizarre, and why it was done, I can't imagine, because of technology. Each developed country has far better ways to surveil their so-called enemies than a camera attached to a balloon. So why that was done is still a mystery.
China said it was like an environmental type weather balloon, but do you believe it had cameras and all that stuff, like kind of mapping out things in the United States or what?
It certainly could have been doing that. However, as I mentioned, the government of China has better ways of doing it that don't look like weather balloons, and could do it. But it also could have been to say the United States, to antagonize the United States. So China is no better. It's kind of taunting the U.S. by doing these sorts of things. The U.S., what the U.S. does to China does to the U.S., it's grabbing the tiger by the tail. You have the tiger, but you're not going to accomplish, you're only going to get slaughtered by that tiger. So these large countries, United States, China, India, Russia, these large and powerful countries need to have a more balanced approach to diplomacy in the United States, and has to take some responsibility for the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because the United States overthrew a government that was friendly to Russia and installed one that wasn't. The United States also, back in the 80s, said that NATO would not be expanded, and NATO is now up to Russia's borders. So these are things that these actions have consequences. The United States and China and Russia and other countries don't always look at the consequences of their actions. They think that their militaries are strong enough that whatever the consequences are, they can bomb them away, resolve those consequences with bombs. But we've reached the point in society where there would be no such thing as a nuclear war. There's no such thing as a limited nuclear war. A limited nuclear war would have devastating consequences for the planet. And the leaders of these countries have to be aware of this. And if they're not, then we're all in huge trouble.
That is scary. It's just scary how they just, they pull off this false flag type deal with whoever trying to do. But how do you know someone's not going to react, or respond with a nuclear attack? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that could very well happen.
It could very well happen. And these countries that pull off these false flag events don't know how people are going to react and how the world's going to react. Another example is Israel, which is forever bombing Gaza because it says that, it's threat rockets from Hamas. Now, Norman Finkelstein, who is an academic, and he's a son of Holocaust survivors, an ardent supporter of the Palestinian people, says that these rockets are enhanced fireworks. That's what he calls them. Now, of course, Israel has the most powerful by the United States. But a year or so ago, when there was a major carpet bombing of Gaza, there was worldwide support in the streets for the Palestinian people. There were strikes in Israel that were unprecedented. There hasn't been a major bombing. There have been smaller bombings, certainly, on a regular basis since then, because the Israeli government didn't expect people to react that way. The Israeli government expected that its old refrain about, this is an existential threat to us, would be believed, and it wasn't. People know that Israel's a powerful country that is oppressing another country, that is illegally occupying it, that is illegally expanding settlements. And when Israel says, Palestine is threatening us, people know it's not true. And so the reaction that Israel gets to these false flags, and it got to that particular one, was far different than it expected. The United States will see the same thing when people get information more quickly. Once people recognize that Iraq did not have weapons of mass destruction, support for the war dropped greatly. But by that time it was too late. The war was already ongoing.
My last question I was going to ask you, Robert, is, we were so absorbed in, everything that's, electronic, our phones and computers and things like that, and people can communicate very quickly between each other now with TikTok and YouTube and all that stuff. How do you see propaganda being used? I'm talking about just on us here in the United States right now.
It's being used in a number of ways. One is through censorship. Facebook is working with the government and with different world governments to suppress information that is coming out of victimized nations. I mentioned Israel and Palestine. A lot of Palestinian information on Facebook is censored. People are blocked, and news items that they put on are removed. That's just one example. But the United States can use these social media platforms to put its own points of view out there and put them out as simply a viewer of Facebook, a common person, common man, common woman, as making these observations, not saying that it's from the government at all. And so people read something on their friend's link. Someone I don't know personally, but friends of mine, they're believing this. It must be so. without giving it a lot of thought. So propaganda can be used greatly by social media, but can also be thwarted to some degree as long as there are social media sites that will not censor what people are writing about what's happening in their countries, including the United States.
Yeah. Well, I don't know of any really. They're all doing it. they're all doing it. You know what I mean? So you're right. People really need to think before they start to believe anything. You know, question everything. Do your own research.
Yes.
Things like that.
Definitely.
So where do you have any suggestions where people should be getting their information from? Do you have any websites that you like to look at, or?
Mint Press News is a very good one.
What's the name of it?
Mint Press News.
Okay.
I would certainly recommend that to anyone. Press TV has a lot of very good information on it. Listen to Democracy Now. World Beyond War, which is an organization I'm affiliated with, has a lot of news on it about articles, mostly opinion articles, that are very good, and people get some really good information about that. And as you said, people need to read whatever they're reading and question it. Does this make sense? Is this consistent with what I know to be factual? Whether it's on one of the sites I've recommended or Fox News, people need to critically think about what they're hearing and seeing. And until they do that, we're going to have the same kinds of problems that we've been having for generations.
You're exactly right. I don't suggest anybody get anything from Facebook. I'm serious. Don't get anything from there. It's all censored. You don't know what's the truth or whatever. It's just not a good idea. All right. And I want you to tell my listeners where they can find out more information about you or contact you if they have any questions or anything, if you're available for that.
Sure. I have a website, robertfantina.com. I also have a podcast. It's called Geopolitics Exploring Myths versus Reality. I do that with journalists from Pakistan. So, and anyone can get in touch with me at my Gmail, which is bfantina@gmail.com. If there's any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from people.
All right. The book is called Propaganda, Lies, and False Flags, How the U.S. Justifies This War. Robert Fantina, my special guest. Robert, many blessings to you, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
To find out more about our guest and all others, please visit our website at mysteriousradio.com. And I want to give special thanks to our co-creator and executive producer, Kim Kyle, who brought this show to you today. And working hard behind the scenes, our team of 4, I want to thank them as well. Follow us on social media and share the show with others that may like the subjects that we cover. I am your host, K-Town, and you're listening to Mysterious Radio.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive. Most of you aren't just listening right now. You're driving, cleaning, and even exercising. But what if you could be saving money by switching to Progressive? Drivers who save by switching save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
Hold on, we got one play. Everything we work for comes down to this. Quick question. Speaking of workouts, how would you rate your athletic program? Bro, we're in the middle of the state championship. Oh, so like a B+ then. Get out of our huddle. Well, at Homes.com, we leave it all on the field to get you detailed information on local schools. Off the field. Copy. All right, go sports. How did he even get in here? Homes.com. We've done your homework.
Lowe's knows how to turn big plans into real results. Whether it's new appliances or a home refresh, get started with 12-month special financing of $299 or more with a MyLowe's Rewards credit card, January 15th through the 30th, so you can invest in your upgrade now and pay over time. Lowe's, we help, you save. Offer subject to credit approval and cannot be combined. Minimum monthly payment required. See store at Lowe's.com for details.
Father, or should I call you Steve? Since it's a new year, maybe we should start cooking fresh with fewer sponsor, Blue Apron. Get 50% off your first 2 orders plus free shipping with code LISTEN50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive. Most of you aren't just listening right now. You're driving, cleaning, and even exercising. But what if you could be saving money by switching to Progressive? Drivers who save by switching save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
Skincare experts and dermatologists have often touted the benefits of indoor humidity as essential for healthy, glowing skin. But did you know dry air can start to harm your skin in as little as 30 minutes? For years, many people have relied on humidifiers for better skin, sleep, and overall wellness. But traditional models, bulky, mold-prone, and difficult to maintain. That's where Canopy Humidifier comes in. Recommended by leading dermatologists, Canopy is a completely reimagined humidifier designed to elevate any space, offering the ultimate in skincare and wellness benefits. Canopy's clean moisture combats dryness, dullness, and fine lines while strengthening the skin's barrier and boosting the effectiveness of topical skincare products. With its sleek design, Canopy is the cleanest and easiest humidifier on the market. With its unique technology, cleaning is as easy as popping it in the dishwasher. Go to getcanopy.co to save $25 on your Canopy humidifier purchase today with Canopy's filter subscription. Even better, use code PODCAST at checkout to save an additional 10% off your Canopy purchase. Your skin will thank you.
Hi there, I'm K-Town, and on this edition of Mysterious Radio.
Well, that's kind of a long story. I come from a background, basically a scientific background. I have a civil engineering license, business management degree, and I worked in the stone quarry business all my life. Didn't even believe in ghosts till I was probably about 60 years old. Bought a store here in New Oxford, Pennsylvania called Golden Lane Antique Gallery and found out that it was highly haunted. In spite of what I thought, got interested. Tried to learn as much as I could about it, and we're only about 8 miles from the Gettysburg battlefield. Started going out, taking pictures, getting a lot of ghost pictures. Wound up writing my first book about, it's called Haunting History of the Battle of Gettysburg. Started out like a normal paranormal person does, using the ghost box, all the tools. We were introduced to some friends out in Salt Lake City that did board channeling, and I had absolutely no idea what it was. They introduced me to it one evening. They invited me to come to a session. Walked in and sat down. The 2 people that were sitting by this circular board had letters and numbers on the outside, and they were using a shot glass instead of a planchette. And I went, what in the world is going on here? So we sat down, and they started out, and the guides came in by saying, hello, Barry, we were waiting for you. And they proceeded to give me all of these messages about stuff that was going on back here in Pennsylvania. And I was just blown away with it. I couldn't believe what was taking place. So I asked them if it could be possible to learn to do this. And they were kind enough to teach me how to take up board channeling. We started working with other people. In the beginning, we would be on Skype, and I'd be in Pennsylvania, and they'd have the board out in Utah, and I'd ask questions, and they'd answer questions about what was taking place. We found out that we really could communicate with spirits with this board. So we started, and my wife and I began to do it by ourselves. And things just started to happen. One question would lead to another, and I started writing books about it. My third book was called Afterlife, What Really Happens on the Other Side, and it was based on channeling sessions where we discussed the other side with the spirits, told us what was happening, and so forth. We advanced a little bit in what we were doing, and we realized that we could basically talk to whoever we wanted to talk to, as long as they hadn't reincarnated and weren't back. So, ask questions about conspiracies. One session we talked to Jack Kennedy. He tells us what took place in with his own assassination and some other things in his life. We channeled with General Custer, George Patton. I wound up writing another book, and it was called Spirits Speak, of Conspiracies and Mysteries. And in that we attacked 27 different conspiracies. We wound up channeling with just all kinds of people, and it was very interesting. So the more advanced we got, I started to take an interest in what was going on around us in the alien world. And one night I asked the spirit guides, I said, do aliens exist? And they said, of course. I said, okay. It didn't seem so obvious to me. And I started asking more and more questions about it. So one night they tell me, we're going to introduce you to a guide that can answer all your questions because he is one. And I said, is one what? And he comes back and says, oh, he was an alien in his last life. Okay. Next session we get on the board, and in comes this guide, and he tells us that his name is Mu. And in his last life he was a blue alien, lived on a planet in our solar system. Or not in our solar system, in our galaxy, the Milky Way. Stood about 9.5 feet in life and lived to about 950 of our years. And we started, I'm thinking, yeah, right, this is, they're really pulling my leg on this one. But the more that we channeled with him and the more information he gave us, the more I realized, we really are talking to the spirit of an alien. So I asked him, I said, how come we're able to channel with you and talk to you? And his answer was that we all have the same soul energies. And the aliens, the spirit energies in our galaxy all go to the same heaven. So if I could talk to a spirit energy that was a human in its last life, I could channel with any of these other types of spirit energies. And I mean, it was such a unique concept. I found it really difficult to believe. But we wound up channeling with him for probably 3 years off and on.
Oh, wow. This is the second or third book you've written about communication with aliens?
Second book about aliens.
Okay, so just so our listeners know, can you tell us how this is different from the other ones?
Well, in the first book was called Aliens Among Us, Exploring Past and Present. And we went through a lot of the information that he gave us about ancient aliens. For instance, in that book, we talked about the Nazca lines in Peru. He told us what a lot of them stood for. For instance, if you're familiar with the Nazca lines, you'll see that there's a huge spider.
Yes.
Well, he told us that the spider stood for the alien type that was actually supporting the people down there, and they did that to memorialize the aliens that were helping them. And I said, what are you trying to tell me here? And he said, well, they were spider people, and those were that particular alien at that point. I said, well, how tall did these spiders stand? And he says they were around 7 feet tall. And I'm going, holy mackerel. Here we have a 7-foot spider down there that you're talking about. But the first book just went through a lot of stuff like that. We explored crop circles, what they stood for, why they take place. And then we got into a bunch of the current alien presence on Earth. Talked a little bit about what was going on, some information about alien types, but basically it was past and present. Now, this new book that came out, it kind of deals with the present and the future. Talks about what's going to take place in the future. In the current book, Spirit Speak of the Universe, I try to give everybody an understanding of the size of the universe. And actually, the size of the universe is unimaginable.
So here's the thing with homemade meals. Eating them is great. But all the chopping and measuring and cleanup, not so much. With new one-pan assemble and bake meals from Blue Apron meals, a fraction of the work. Just assemble the pre-chopped ingredients, bake in the oven, and enjoy. Shop, assemble, and bake at blueapron.com. Get 50% off your first 2 orders with code APRON50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Did you know you can buy your car completely online on AutoTrader? Really? Just visit autotrader.com, filter and search through dealer listings for the car you want, make, model, color, and all the features that matter to you. Go ahead, get picky. Whether you're into subcompacts with heated cup holders, crossovers with all-wheel drive, pickups with kicking sound systems, or SUVs that can survive whatever chaos your kids unleash. Just drop in your info and you'll only see cars in your budget. Really, once you find your one and only, you can do the whole deal online and have the car delivered to your driveway. Or you can pick it up at the dealership and drive your new ride right off the lot. Really. AutoTrader makes it easy to buy your car online because the whole process is designed around your wants and must-haves. AutoTrader. Buy your car online. Really.
Lowe's knows how to turn big plans into real results. Whether it's new appliances or a home refresh, get started with 12-month special financing on purchases of $299 or more with a MyLowe's Rewards credit card, January 15th through the 30th, so you can invest in your upgrade now and pay over time. Lowe's, we help, you save. Offer subject to credit approval and cannot be combined. Minimum monthly payment required. See store Lowe's.com for details.
It's so gigantic. No one can really conceive of it.
Didn't he tell you that it was expanding like many believe it is?
Yes. Yeah. He said it was expanding. We got into things like how did the universe, how was it formed? We talked about black holes, wormholes, all kinds of things. We just cover a whole plethora of information in this current book. We also get into the spirituality of the universe. The fact that our God is the God of the galaxy, and who actually told us that on his planet they worship the same God that we do. And apparently God sends his son to all of these civilized planets. And on Moose Planet, they referred to him as the wise one. And he was sent to them about 4,000 of our years ago. And they actually have a celebration on his planet very similar to our Christmas, where they celebrate his birth. And we do an awful lot on the spirituality of our galaxy. We have a whole chapter that is dedicated to the universality of God, talks about the powers of our God throughout our galaxy, describes the fact that many of the planets are actually, the highly civilized planets are all very peaceful. And actually they all get along because they learned long ago with their incredible powers that how easy it would be to annihilate everybody. So, they came to the conclusion that, well, maybe we shouldn't get in everybody's faces and everybody gets along. We have a chapter dedicated to the committee that governs our galaxy. Everything is very well laid out. Mu tells us that there are plenty of other young planets similar to Earth. That humans have only walked this Earth for about 200,000 years. And he told us that aliens have visited Earth since the time of the dinosaurs, which were over 60 million years ago. So they've had an awful lot of evolution on humans.
Right. And okay, so let me jump in here real quick here, Barry. You always use the board though with your wife, right?
Yes.
You never use it with anyone else.
Yeah. No, I can. We're at a point now that I can basically use it with almost anybody, and we've advanced to the point now that we don't spell our words out anymore. I'm now hearing the messages as they're coming in my head, and I simply use the board to verify like the first letter of a word, so that I know that I'm hearing the right thing and that we're getting the proper messages. But no, we've been actually doing live channeling sessions on Facebook Live, and we've gotten so fast with this now. A session of about 50 minutes will generate a transcript of around 2,500 words.
Now, I saw the picture in your book of the spirit of Mu. It was like a blue light. How did you get that? It was like a blue light or streak or something like that?
I took that photograph when I was photographing for my first book. That was on the Gettysburg battlefield. And I would actually use that photograph in my lectures. And I would say, I have no idea what this is. It's spirit energy of some nature. So as we progressed in the first book, one night I said, Moo, would it be possible for me to take a picture of you so I could put it in the book? And he came back to me, he said, you've already photographed me twice. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. And he said, no, Connie knows what I'm talking about. And Connie says, were you that blue light that we have the photograph of? And he said, yes, that's one of them. And I actually have a second blue light photograph. And that was his spirit energy that he showed himself. And he did it like 2 years before I knew I had wanted a picture of him.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, it's a very interesting picture. I know you got 2 of them in there now. Let's go back to the spider beings.
Okay.
Very interesting. It's really, really interesting. Now, have you looked and tried to see, if you can kind of validate what they're telling you as far as that's concerned? Have you heard anything else about these spider beings that once existed on the planet?
Well, I have heard this. I know. One thing that I now know is how much we underestimate just how many alien types are out there. For instance, there's a chapter in the book where I talk about their vehicles, and he told me that go from the size of a baseball to one the size of the United States. And that took a little while to sink in. And at the time, I said, well, where is this thing? It's the size of the United States. He says, well, they have it hidden behind the planet of Saturn right now, so nobody sees it back there. And that's what they use as their base facility for their other motherships and so forth. But the question I then asked him was, well, how many different alien types would be on a ship of that size? And he said, probably over 250 different kinds. So there are many, many different types of extraterrestrials that we've never even conceived of out there.
Well, you know what? I can go ahead and tell you that I've had 2 researchers. I've heard one actually on a lecture, but one I interviewed, and he told me about these spider beings himself, that they were here, and I had no idea that they had any correlation or anything having to do with the Nazca line.
Yeah, that was them. It's amazing. You'll find verification just comes out of nowhere with this stuff. It's so much of it is arranged by the spirit world. They want us to learn these things, and they tie it all together.
Definitely something to think about and dig into more. Now, Barry, have they told you anything about what's going on with our sun? I've heard so many people talk about they believe that our sun has some type of portal, something that allows these alien beings to just pop in and out of our end of the universe. Have they told you anything about that?
No, not about our sun. I mean, they've talked to me about the way they travel. Well, in order to understand how they travel, you got to understand a little bit about our current technology. Now we have a Voyager 1 out there, and it's just now going into the area of interstellar space where the sun no longer has gravitational effect, and it's been out there for 35 years. In order for that vehicle to travel to our closest star, it's going to take another 40,000 years. So the message is our technology does not get it done. Now, I asked Moo one time, I said, how long does it take for you to travel from your planet? And it's named Robe. It's on the far side of the Milky Way. He said about 2 days. So he can travel, 100 light years in the time that it takes us to drive to Salt Lake City. So they're way ahead of us on this technology. And he tried to describe to us the way it happens. And it's really pretty much like the beam me up, Scotty thing, where it's an intermolecular teleportation technique. But they can do it with these entire ships, and they can cover vast distances, in times we can't even comprehend.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive. Most of you aren't just listening right now. You're driving, cleaning, and even exercising. But what if you could be saving money by switching to Progressive? Drivers who save by switching save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
Lowe's knows how to turn plans into real results. Whether it's new appliances or a home refresh, get started with 12-month special financing on purchases of $299 or more with a MyLowe's Rewards credit card, January 15th through the 30th, so you can invest in your upgrade now and pay over time. Lowe's, we help. Subject to credit approval, cannot be combined. Minimum monthly payment required. See store at Lowe's.com for details.
Skincare experts and dermatologists have often touted the benefits of indoor humidity as essential for healthy, glowing skin. But did you know dry air can start to harm your skin in as little as 30 minutes? For years, many people have relied on humidifiers for better skin, sleep, and overall wellness. But traditional models, bulky, to maintain. That's where Canopy Humidifier comes in. Recommended by leading dermatologists, Canopy is a completely reimagined humidifier designed to elevate any space, offering the ultimate in skincare and wellness benefits. Canopy's clean moisture combats dryness, dullness, and fine lines while strengthening the skin's barrier and boosting the effectiveness of topical skincare products. With its sleek design, Canopy is the cleanest and easiest humidifier on the market. With its unique technology, cleaning is as easy as popping it in the dishwasher. Go to getcanopy.co to save $25 on your Canopy humidifier purchase today with Canopy's filter subscription. Even better, use code PODCAST at checkout to save an additional 10% off your Canopy purchase. Your skin will thank you.
Okay. Are there alien beings on the planet with us right now?
Of course. Palladians are here with us. You can't tell a Palladian. I was actually introduced to one, and the woman suspected it, but didn't even realize that she was one. They've been here forever. Einstein's grandfather was a Palladian. That's why he was so gifted. They tell us that we have, that my wife and I both have alien blood in us. And it seems as though people with a lot of psychic abilities will often have this type of a background. This is my concept, but I think this is how some of these abilities get passed on. How we learn it. There are shapeshifters. When my wife was abducted, they used a shapeshifter to do that. There's all kinds of monks. He told us that there are like 3 different types that can shapeshift. And if you knew what went on around us, you'd be utterly shocked.
All right, let's go back to some of the planets before I lose my focus on this. I don't want to forget this. I've always wanted to know about Venus. I keep up with a lot of research, and some of them believe there's actual intelligent life on the planet now. We're not being told what's actually there. And one person that really comes to mind for me is Dr. Stranges, that lectured back in the 80s about an alien being that came to Washington, D.C. or showed up there called Valiant Thor. Now, he told them he came from Venus and that he wanted to give us things that would help us as far as our health is concerned. Basically trying to help humanity, okay, and help us live longer. What have they shared with you about the planet Venus?
Well, they tell us right now there's nothing on Venus. There has been life there. Basically, at one time or another, there's been life on all of our different planets. What they tell us that there is current life on the moons of Jupiter. There are a couple moons that are actually fairly similar to Earth, and they tell us there's life there. And believe it or not, they tell us that there's a type of life form on Pluto. They get around. They really get around. They also tell us that the moon is hollow, and then on the backside of the moon there is an entrance. And when we had our exploration of the moon and they came around from the backside, our astronaut, you can be sure that Santa Claus is real. That Santa Claus was a code word for aliens. They actually saw them on the backside. And apparently they also saw one of the huge ships were parked on the moon at the time. So they are here, there, and they're everywhere.
All right. We are discussing his new book called Spirits Speak of the Universe, Extraterrestrial Spirituality, and Our Galaxy. And you can pick it up from Amazon, and we'll be back with more right after this. My special guest tonight is Barry Strom, and we are discussing his new book that you need to pick up from Amazon called Spirits Speak of the Universe. Now, Barry, I'm wondering if you would oblige. Can you tell me what they shared with you about them?
Okay, crop circles have existed for a long time. In my first alien book, I actually have a woodcut of a crop circle that was done around 1640. And they referred to them as a mowing devil because people at that time had absolutely no way or thought of alien beings. They served different purposes. Sometimes they are there to leave messages for the other aliens. And actually, Moo told us they said they love to do these crop circles because they like to mess with us. So sometimes they just do it because they can. It's done with a type of Air Force that they use to make these patterns, and there was a very famous one that was done near Stonehenge, and there were actually witnesses to what the people who watched this thing take place. They couldn't see the ship, but they could see this crop circle taking form. So they had the ship was in stealth mode, and they used this type of it's a very hard to describe, but it's like they use wind force to beat down the grass particles, and they form these different things, and some of them have different meanings. There's a couple of them that people think they have actually translated, but they're very, very real. Probably I would say about a third of them are real, because some of them are fake now. But when the real ones are the ones with the great detail and examples. I've got some good pictures of them in my first alien book.
Barry, can you tell me if you know of any places here on Earth that hold great significance for these extraterrestrials?
Yeah, and they've had a permanent base in Antarctica for forever. The pyramids were built with the assistance of aliens, and they were actually used for navigation in the early days. There are a lot of structures around. Right now, there is a pyramid, the melting ice in Antarctica. There's actually a pyramid that is emerging from the ice down there. I have a picture of it in my universe book. But disclosure is going to come from what's down in Antarctica. As the ice melts, the base is going to become more and more obvious down there. And Moo tells us that we'll have disclosure probably by the year 2020, so it's coming pretty fast.
So did they tell you why Antarctica is important to them, or is it just a place they chose?
Well, it's a place where they haven't been bothered. Weather means nothing to these aliens. I mean, many of them breathe different types of climates. Temperatures don't bother them. So Antarctica was a logical, because there weren't many humans down there at the time. Now, as we get more and more involved in exploring Antarctica, we've uncovered their bases, and we're creating problems down there because it's getting harder and harder to keep what's happening a secret. The last year of the Obama administration, the Secretary of State Kerry made a quick trip down to Antarctica towards the end of it. At the end of it.
Well, actually, he wasn't the only one, but yes, we actually caught him.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't going down to make snow angels.
Right.
He was going down to calm down the situation, and it'll be harder and harder to keep this a secret in the upcoming few years.
What do you think he was actually doing, Barry? Like they discovered something, so he needed to have eyes on it, or what?
Yeah. No, they uncovered the base down there, and the aliens were not happy about it. For one thing, what we did we have a treaty with them. Basically, they're allowed to observe and help us, and it's supposed to be kept a secret. Well, all of a sudden, we've uncovered this thing down there, and there was a risk of it becoming public. So Kerry had to go down and calm the situation with them and talk.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive. Most of you aren't just listening right now. You're driving, even exercising. But what if you could be saving money by switching to Progressive? Drivers who save by switching save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not dates and situations.
Lowe's knows how to turn big plans into real results. Whether it's new appliances or a home refresh, get started with 12-month special financing on purchases of $299 or more with the MyLowe's Rewards credit card, January 15th through the 30th. So you can invest in your upgrade now and pay over time. Lowe's, we help, you save. Offer subject to credit approval and cannot be combined. Minimum monthly payment required. See store or Lowe's.com for details.
You're one of those people. Skincare experts and dermatologists have often touted the benefits of indoor humidity as essential for healthy, glowing skin. But did you know dry air can start to harm your skin in as little as 30 minutes? For years, many people have relied on humidifiers for better skin, sleep, and overall wellness. But traditional models, bulky, mold-prone, and difficult to maintain. That's where Canopy Humidifier comes in. Recommended by leading dermatologists, Canopy is a completely reimagined humidifier designed to elevate any space, offering the ultimate in skincare and wellness benefits. Canopy's clean moisture combats dryness, dullness, and fine lines while strengthening the skin's barrier and boosting the effectiveness of topical skincare products. With its sleek design, Canopy is the cleanest and easiest humidifier on the market. With its unique technology, cleaning is as easy as popping it in the dishwasher. Go to getcanopy.co to save $25 on your Canopy humidifier purchase today with Canopy's filter subscription. Even better, use code PODCAST at checkout to save an additional 10% off your Canopy purchase. Your skin will thank you.
No, it was not an accident that you rushed down.
This probably has a lot to do with our run-in with them, supposedly, when Admiral Byrd went down the first time, correct?
Yes, it all ties together. That was all part of it.
Okay. All right. So, what about the world's oceans, Barry? They have to be down there, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Many of their bases are underwater. They told us there's an underwater base in Catalina Bay in California.
Okay. Well, a lot. Okay, so, all right. So, I want to know if you've had a UFO sighting.
I have. I was driving out west, and I was driving out on Interstate 80, and I just had this feeling that I was going to see something going out, and I actually had my camera on the car seat with me, and I looked over, and here are these 3 triangle ships, and I threw the car over on the shoulder, and they were entering a cloud formation. I jumped out, got the camera ready, and they never came out of the damn cloud. but I guess they decided to go south. But they showed himself to me, just the feeling I was going to see that. Now I'll take you a step further in that I've seen a real alien, not just a ship, but a real honest to God alien. We have an apartment here close to the store in Pennsylvania, and Connie and I were asleep, and we sleep with a lot of night light on because we have a black cat. We don't want to kill ourselves or the cat. So I wake up in the middle of the night, I sit up, and I see this big form standing next to her side of the bed. And I looked at it and I thought, man, I got to be dreaming. I clear my head and I look at it, and I can see it's got a short reptilian head, it's standing about 7 foot. And it turns and it looks at me, and believe it or not, it smiles, and I can see it in the light. And then it's just like you snap your fingers and he knocks me out. And I wake up the next morning and I'm thinking, did I dream this thing? What happened? So I get a hold of my friends out in Salt Lake City with the channeling board. We're in Pennsylvania. I say, I want you to do me a favor tonight.